why we should care about it regardless of where we are is because it's all interconnected. So wild spaces are not just about cute animals and some distant far off place to visit, but they're actually very integral to our well-being. As city dwellers, this disconnect has gotten more and more because you can live your life in this disconnected manner and not see those impact, whether you like snakes or butterflies or birds or not. We will have to live with other species around us. I keep telling people who live in the city is that you're comfortable crossing the road with these buses and all the traffic flying around. What's going to hit me? And people just know how to navigate it, and they've made themselves totally fine with a bizarre system, which is literally life threatening. You're perfectly fine navigating it. You've made those choices and those assumptions that, yeah, this is the mess I'm in and I'll go around it. But to make that same adjustment for a snake, which is probably non-venomous and non-threatening to you or your life or anything around, we immediately want to get rid of it, move it out. It becomes this enemy. We've lost that basic respect for other life forms. And many times we've lost that basic respect for even other human beings. And collectively, as human beings, we seem to kind of be pretty bad at looking beyond ourselves. You're not going to find these safe zones, as it were, from the climate catastrophe or from a lot of these issues. It is in our best interest and I think the decent and right thing to do, to wake up and actually do something about it.
Over 200 people died, two settlements were wiped out, and one severely impacted after heavy rains caused a landslip in the northeast Kerala's hilly district of Wayanad. With about 500 injured and many still missing in a land battered beyond recognition, Wayanad is not alone. There are 147 such landslide susceptible districts in India. Hello and welcome to OoruLabs podcast. I am Sathya Sankaran. Why are we talking about this in an urban affairs podcast? Urban areas are net demand aggregators and a net consumer. There isn't any extraction of food or minerals happening in the cities. The industries, mostly on the outskirts, only do value addition for consumption, largely in the cities. So, where do you think our food, steel, cement, bricks, and other materials come from? Where does the waste we put out after consumption go? We definitely don't want it inside the city. More than half of India's population is soon going to be living inside the cities. And they're going to be living in 8,000 census defined cities across India. India's progress from the 3 trillion USD in 2024 to 35, 45, 55 trillion in 2047 is going to be led by urban agglomerations that are engines of the economy, labor, and consequently consumption and waste generation. Wayanad is a symbol of the consequences of our consumption. The crisis in the city is waterlogging in front of your house. It's a minor inconvenience to what the people of Wayanad paid for serving us with resorts and quarries. Siddarth is a field based conservation biologist and development practitioner. He holds a master's degree in ecology and has over 2 decades of experience working in various capacities, spanning conservation practice, wildlife research, and media. Siddarth is also a TEDx speaker and a 2015 Kinship Conservation Fellow. He lives in an off grid field stations in the Deccan savanna grasslands of South India. Let's ask him why this happens and how do we fix it. Welcome to the show, Siddarth.
Hi, Satya. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
You saw this and you've been working on many things like this.
Yeah.
Give us a sense of what is Wayanad to urban people and why should we care about it?
Yeah, I mean, the way you said, how do we solve this? How do we fix this? That itself is, I mean, people have been breaking their head over this for donkey's years. And in one way, the fix is easy, but in one way, it's super complicated, right? So, in simple terms, why we should care about it, regardless of where we are, is because it's all interconnected. From an urban perspective, if you look at the Western Ghats, and Wayanad and Kerala is very much in the Western Ghats, your water comes from there. All the ecologically regulatory services come from there. And if you take, for example, say a city like Bangalore, it's not specific to Wayanad, but to the Western Ghats, our water comes from the Kaveri River Basin, and that is in the Western Ghats, starts in the Western Ghats, close to Wayanad, actually, close on the border with Kerala in Coorg, and comes through those forests, the very same forests. And we're reliant on that. I mean, so that's just water. But there's so many things that functional landscapes provide us that we don't take into account on a day-to-day basis, right? From pollinatory services to keeping any of the nutrient cycles going or any of these ecological processes that we take for granted. These are plagued by all these wild spaces. So wild spaces are not just about cute animals and some distant, far off place to visit, but they're actually very integral to our well-being. So it's not such a complicated issue, but we sometimes struggle to grasp that.
So that's the whole conundrum for us. Wildlife, its impact, biodiversity, all of these regions that exist so far away. How are we supposed to understand their significance? It's quite like you said, it's quite simple. But for you who have been working in this space, you can see those things.
Yeah.
But on a daily basis, when I go into Kaban Park, I see the trees.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it doesn't make sense to me to know anything more, or it's probably a lot of information. It's hard to find out. I mean, there are lots of things that say bees are key to
Yeah.
this, and the snakes are key to this, the elephants are key to that. We intuitively understand, but I don't want an elephant and a tiger in Kaban Park, right? So
Right.
when we start excluding that, then how are we supposed to understand? One is understanding the significance. Second is how are we supposed to preserve these things? How am I supposed to even think about it?
I mean, I think if we go back to to conceptually how we start with this problem, right? So we start by othering nature, by looking at ourselves as something separate from ecosystems, from elephants, from the trees, all the stuff. So we've already created this division between we human beings who kind of seem to be separate, and nature and wildlife are something out there which is in this wild space. So I think that concept itself has to change. People have to realize and understand that we're very much part of this system. There is no such concept that you can just have wild spaces and wild places somewhere else, and we will be free of that and just extract from it. So actually, a lot of if you go to the solutioning part of it, which is why there's so much work being done with young people, with kids, taking them out into forests, or even getting them to look at birds and butterflies and look at trees and uh, all these things, because you need that connect to be rebuilt. So what has fundamentally happened, especially I think as city dwellers, this disconnect has gotten more and more, because you can live your life in this disconnected manner and not see those impacts. So these are all secondary, and it seems like it's someone else's problem to fix, or it doesn't seem to impact us on a day-to-day basis until something happens, like you have flooding, or you have like the city of Bangalore, like water comes, or it happens in Bombay or Chennai or wherever. That's when people might wake up, or we might wake up. But broadly, I think it's this disconnect that we've created. It's an artificial disconnect, and that will only take us so far and will last so long. So the solution really isn't to start accepting that we are part of this connected system.
Maybe there is a way to get people, which you've been working on, to get them understand the connected system. But I want to jump and say, let's say I did understand, right? I am probably a more informed individual and I kind of understand. I want to do the reconciliation thing.
Mm-hmm.
There is different layers of life. Ours
Yeah.
is just one form, right?
Right.
Then there is from the harmless to the dangerous,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be the birds and the fishes we consider.
Yeah.
I'm okay to have them in my lake,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to have snakes in my backyard.
Right.
I'm not going to have the tigers in my backyard. So there's a range. And when the flooding
Right.
comes and the waterlogging happens and a crocodile washes up, I kind of bucket the range of other life
Yeah.
into different things. And it's another problem that I've seen lake rejuvenations happen where they don't even want fishermen, fishers, birds. They don't even care. They
Yeah.
want a nice concrete walkway for
Mm-hmm.
us to just walk.
Yeah.
And there should be water and there should be trees. We limit
Right.
to saying water and trees. We don't even care what type of tree it is, as
Right.
long as it is giving us the shade. We're not
Right.
interested in the wildlife.
Right.
How are we supposed to think about all these things? Because I've been grappling with that, because a lot of people don't seem to think that there was one lake where they were fighting, saying that you're a fisherman, you shouldn't be here. These fishes are not
Right.
for fishing.
Right.
They don't understand that he keeps the cycle going.
Yeah.
Right? He needs the fish, so he'll make sure there is fish in the water.
Yeah.
It's just mind blowing that urban people. How are we supposed to even start with this problem?
So, right now we're touched upon many, many topics, and very deep topics, as it were. Because if we just go into the one thing of people stopping fisher folk from extracting fish, is a complex issue that cuts across maybe caste issues, class issues, issues of access of the commons. So these are complex issues if you go into it. But at a very simplistic level, when you talk about living with other species, there is no way out of it, right? There is, whether you like it or not, whether you like snakes or butterflies or birds or not, we will have to live with other species around us. So that is one, is that it exists, and it can actually be pretty rewarding, not to romanticize coexistence of people and animals. And most of the people actually who are at the forefront of it, or the real dealing with it, are mostly impoverished or marginalized communities, right? So the person actually dealing with the elephant rampaging through the fields or through area are people who already live on forest fringes or in these places, and they don't have, say, a car or something to keep them safe from that. So a lot of the issues are actually being dealt with every day. Farmers are facing huge crop losses. People are getting bit by snakes in rural areas. I think a lot more than probably what you'd see in the urban spaces. So one thing I think, is to have acceptance. It's like also a perception of what is dangerous and how. So that stems very clearly from our othering of nature. It goes back to this whole thing of where we think a snake is dangerous. It could be, yes, you have venomous species and they can be dangerous, but they're also these tiny little creatures that are super frightened of you. And you are, 10 times or more larger than them. And it's this not being able to put ourselves in any other shoes other than our very own. So it kind of stems from this problem of not being able to accept that we need to live around other beings. So it's not an easy one to figure, but one I keep telling people who live in the city is that you're comfortable crossing the road with these buses and all the traffic flying around, and people just walk so easily. The most uh, uh, frightening person in a forest or in a wild space is just taking on the city so easily. I'm struggling, like looking this way, that way, what's going to hit me, and people just know how to navigate it, and they've made themselves totally fine with a bizarre system, which is literally life-threatening. You're perfectly fine navigating it. You've made those choices and those assumptions that, yeah, this is the mess I'm in and I'll go around it. But to make that same adjustment for a snake, which is probably non-venomous and non-threatening to you or your life or anything around, we immediately want to get rid of it, move it out. It becomes this enemy. You see this increase in perceptions of danger, the way we portray it in media, the way if somebody sees a leopard on a CCTV camera, those leopards have been there for millennia. Before us, they've been around in these landscapes, and they're going to continue to be there. But now when we see it, we have this danger, and it also dies down, right? So a lot of it is perception. So it is a tough one because it's behavioral change. It's really to get people to accept and to find ways to deal with it. And some of it can be very difficult because some animals could be dangerous, or some things living with wildlife can be dangerous. It can also be quite peaceful. It boils down to how we our attitudes towards it, and that's a slow. And the reason why it's a problem is because that is a slow, long process to change. Inherently, if you have fear, because we also bring our kids up in this way where we teach them that the snake is bad or dangerous, you shouldn't go near it, and all this stuff. So it's a behavioral change issue largely.
No, but it's very interesting, that analogy of saying that you have tigers in your midst in the form of cars whizzing past you, and you're willing to accept that risk and still do the work.
Yeah.
But you're not willing to accept the risk of a wild animal being in your midst, or even an animal being in your midst. Even stray dogs are seen as a threat to be disposed of, but the car and the vehicles that kill you every day are not considered as something that needs to be disposed of, but they need to exist. It's an evil that I am myself also using at some points in time. If we put that analogy, we do manage by saying that let's have the motor vehicles whizzing dangerously past us, but give ourselves safe spaces and continue to coexist. Why don't we give ourselves safe spaces and places for animals, birds, and the other beings beyond us, and create those safe spaces? We don't seem to, because we seem to be gentrifying all the parks. We seem to be gentrifying all the. Maybe we have learned to deal with traffic, but we've not learned to deal with the animals. So it is possible that if it is there, don't do certain things. So if the vehicle is going on the road, don't cross it. Wait for it to go away. So why don't we apply same principles? That's a beautiful analogy. Do you think that's a way for people to think of, is to what is the adaptation they need to do?
It's the arrogance that we have, right? When it comes to nature and to other things, we should just be left alone and not bothered by these things. They're not worth our time. So if you look even at For example, I mean, you think that, say in the US, right, where they have all these national parks, people want to run, jogging up and down a national park which has grizzly bears, for example. And then everyone's shocked when there's a bear that comes out of the woods and, tries to chase down someone who's running. But you don't want to change what you want to do in any format, in any scale. So you don't want to have that space to respect and to say, okay, there are other creatures around. So we've lost that basic respect for other life forms. And many times we've lost that basic respect for even other human beings. And so that is the problem. I think it's a basic form of respect. And if you look back at cultures that do have that respect, they found ways, which is why you have in mythology in so many cultures, animals and plants and trees and mountains and rivers as being very central to what they respect and care about. And it kind of worked well when you have that balance. Now we've just trashed it all. Our respect is somewhere else, and our aspirations are somewhere else for what is cool, what is lovely, and all this stuff has just taken a backseat. So we need to fix that. We need to be more in tune with our natural surroundings. And even if you want to take it from a very selfish, self-preservation perspective, we will not last very long if you don't have bees to pollinate the agricultural crops. You will not have functional ecosystems if you don't have these large mammals like elephants and everything else creating and making your forests viable. So just from a very selfish, human-centric perspective, we can't do it just by being us, and technology or nothing is going to fix that. So you really need to find ways to live with nature and to encourage it to be around us. Now, people are trying different solutions. It's not like I have some great magic wand. I wish I did, but we don't. How to do it is many people are trying. But that's the basic concept, is that we really do need to accept that we are part of the natural ecosystem in some form.
But we seem to appreciate it. We seem to like it because we are going very far to find it. We don't want it next to us, but we don't mind going somewhere, creating resorts in places. And if it's pristine and it's nice, we want it even more. So we want it right in the middle of that for a little time, like a week or a weekend. So in that quest of liking this, we seem to be doing something else. Why are there so many resorts in pristine hill places that we escape to? And how do we understand? Because we take our city there. I've said this on the other podcast on the tourism thing also, right? We take our music, our booze, our everything, and our partying and everything to the pristine wilderness and play the same thing that we had in our city. We transport everything there. If that is what you wanted to do it here. But when you go there, we don't understand the local culture. We don't understand who these people are, how they live, what pressures we are putting on them, how to not do that. There seems to be so much knowledge that is required that it seems like an uphill task. How many things are we supposed to know before we go to these places and destroy them?
So that's the thing. You don't need to know. So it's I think the easy escape is to say, you know what, I can't be equipped to know, okay, which part of the Sayadris I'm going to and what is the local culture, who's the indigenous person. That's not what you need to know, which species necessarily. So it again comes back to respect. So liking is very different. Like you might like to be outdoors because, it's nice, it's cool, it's makes you feel peaceful, because intrinsically as biological beings, when we go out, you will feel better when you're in the midst of greenery, clean air, fresh air with bird sounds. It will happen to almost all people. You will feel better. That's just natural. So liking it and respecting it are two very different things. So liking to be there, but then wanting to ruin it is a lack of respect. So we've lost that somewhere along the way. So you don't need to know species names or which community, but you should be open and respectful of the fact that there are other communities, other beings, other living beings, non-living beings who are in those places. And when you're entering some other place, you should be respectful of it. It's the same thing, right? It's a lot. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of our thing is a regulation. Like the metro is now so clean and everything because it's highly regulated and people are banned and fined. That's sad, no? We should be able to respect a public bus station regardless of whether someone was going to catch us for trashing it or not. So there's some breakdown in the way we look at things, nature or otherwise. And so it's a larger problem. It's not just in terms of, it's just the same with the waste problem. It's similar to that, the lack of respect for commons, lack of respect for each other and for ourselves, as it were.
But think about this. It wasn't always like this. Like you said, our mythology always said we would live, but somewhere we thought we outgrew that thing. It is something that was okay. It's written somewhere. Those days are gone. Now we have access to so much more technology and medicine. We are the superior race and we have the ability to conquer this. And in the cities, we have created a safe space for ourselves, free of all of these things, and we'll keep gentrifying it. Of course,
Yeah.
we never make it free of the other snake on the road, which is the motor vehicle. But that's my axe to grind. But don't you think there is always this thing that progress means we have to create these separate spaces for ourselves and move that there, and I am making my, what do you call that, oasis of human existence here. And even in the political class, when they or anybody, even a normal human being of the last generation which has seen prosperity, the lakes, when they clean that up, they just kind of dredge the whole thing up. There is no fish, no bird, no nothing, but the priority is a walking track, not completely paved walking
Yeah.
track. I want to see the water and walk by it. It doesn't matter if there are other beings that might want to be a part of that. How do you see this attitude and the fight between human? I don't know if we will ever, we can't even accept stray dogs on the road. We don't know how to deal with that even.
Many things you've said here, and many complex things again. So one is, let's not romanticize the past and that everyone knew, and it was a lovely thing that it was fine. We've done some horrific things as communities in the past, of exterminating large mammal species, of overharvesting. I mean, we know that many civilizations have collapsed because of the kind of ecological damage they've done. It's not that we were brilliant and we figured it out. I think a mix of technology, the way in which the entire capitalist framework of extraction, that economy has taken over everything, and the fact that we are able to extract resources at the rate we have, and a whole number of factors have probably contributed to the mess and the scale of the mess we're in. And as we advance and realize that, okay, thunder is not going to kill us, whereas maybe that was some fear that was kept in us, we've kind of unleashed ourselves upon the world and done a lot of damage collectively. Of course, there are different kinds of people who have done disproportionately different amounts of damage. That is true. But collectively, as human beings, we seem to kind of be pretty bad at looking beyond ourselves. So beyond ourselves, and that is why you see this. I want my lake, but I do not want any other diversity there. And that also stems from what we think is beautiful. Like some people actually think that this paved, very neat, clean path with nothing, no undergrowth on the side, and that still flat water is beautiful. I think that a wild space without a paved path, which is meandering, is beautiful. So that in my head is beautiful. So it's also that, right? What you think is beautiful. I remember once going to my house on the farm, there's a a mud road, which they wanted to tar. And there was a huge project for it, a small little road. And the explanation the guy gave me when he was trying to cut down the trees, which I was stopping them from doing, was that what is wrong with you right now? You can't see this beautiful expanse. You will be able to soon see a nice long tar road, and you'll have this vision of this, none of the trees here, but a nice straight tar road. And that literally was one of his explanations for why we should tar it. And he was taking that on, and I was like, no, actually, I really like the fact that it's mud and there are bushes and puddles when it rains and trees, and it's a mess. And that's how we look at our landscaping as well, right? We want it manicured. We don't want the wild plants. We want these very trimmed, kind of designed things. So there's some problem that we have now developed with wilderness, and that needs to be fixed. And yeah, we want it in these very bite-sized, cute packages of where it's acceptable to us in that sense. We don't like the unknown. We don't like something we can't control. So it goes back to also this thing of controls, lack of respect, and how we can control and dominate. So these narratives that we've built over time, right? Like conquering a mountain, dominating nature, doing all these things is where we've messed up, and we've put those kinds of thoughts into the way we want to look at nature, other it, and that's led us to this. And that's one part of it. The second part of it is, if you start looking at how extractive our systems are, if you look at where those wild spaces are, you look at where the natural resources are, you look at where all of this is, it's at the same space. So we're in an extractive system. that needs to devour all these things to thrive and to call progress and to develop. So fundamentally, there is a problem. Fundamentally, there is, so as much as we educate, as it were, or people are aware, you still have the problem of your very basis of everything is built on extraction. So that's a larger kind of socio-political economic issue.
That goes back to what we started with, which is Wayanad as a proxy for how our consumption, I'm not saying all of the consumption is in cities, but look at it. Almost 70 to 80% of what we consume is in the cities. Almost everything we put back as waste is from the cities, but we don't want it here. We want it somewhere else.
Right.
We want all the dirty things to go away, and what we consider clean and gentrified is what we need to have.
Yeah.
But if you said that is the quest of mankind, and that is what we feel our power over the other animals is what made us human beings and being able to be so intelligent, isn't it counterintuitive that if we had so much of intelligence, why don't we let them be a part of our system?
That is the dominant narrative that has shaped a lot of the past few hundred years. That is the dominant narrative that has taken over and has shaped that. So it's not that I think that it's default or inbuilt, but it is the dominant one. So how do you actually question that? And how do you get other ways of looking at it? And when you go back to this thing of cities and resource extraction, any place that that doesn't have that, when you say sustainability, you're not able to actually live in that space and to provide you the basic needs for life, it becomes unsustainable. You're going to have to import resources, right? And that's what happens. And so cities are the worst end of that spectrum. You are, as the moment you settle down there and you need to get things to come in, you are extracting. You're making the hinterlands this extractive place where you take from, and you're not really giving back in that sense, maybe in economic sense, but actual goods or ecological functions, you're not really giving back, you're only taking. So that is fundamentally a problem of any form of just sitting in one space and bringing resources to that. And I mean, there's this whole argument about how with the advent of agriculture 10,000 years ago, you started causing the problems, because otherwise, if you look at any other species, they move where the resources are, and they have very basic needs for resources. And their numbers get more. They're very happy to stay in smaller spaces. You can have tigers, for example, that would stay in 10 square kilometers or 15 square kilometers if they had all the resources there, if they had a good prey base, water, availability of resources. And if they did, that same tiger which needed 10 could go to 70 or 80 or 100 square kilometers, right? So 10x the area that it needs to roam around just to get the same resources. So animals are doing that and moving around. They're not sitting in one place demanding everything to come to them. So that's how they've managed their balance in some sense. Whereas we are sitting in one place and extracting resources from other places and not rejuvenating those places. You can go back to the same Kaveri example, right? So which one of us is sitting in Bangalore and taking the water is doing anything to protect the watersheds of the Kaveri or the Western Ghats? The trees there, the plants there, or even the farmers there who are subsidizing our water in a way, right? Because they're taking care of that watershed. But we are not paying a tax back to them, or we are not helping them in any form for that service that they're also providing us for the thing. We're putting the onus again on them. So this is the other problem. So a lot of these issues is that, again, the people who are in and around these forest areas, the onus is put back on them to do more. Don't cut firewood, don't do this, don't do that. Whereas we have everything and we are largely a cause of the problem. We want to go back there and say, you guys are the ones who are either hunting or taking out firewood, which they might well be, but then it's our responsibility to find a solution there. So how do you can't just go and point fingers. The whole idea, and this is what conservation work is, right, is how do you then figure out a smart solution that would benefit those people? Because just going and lecturing and educating as it was is not going to cut it and is not fair either.
There is an economic incentive for them to cater to someone who's willing to give them back in money, that they can say that I'm also progressing. And they seem to bear the extraordinary brunt of what they are doing in order for thinking that they are making economic progress to serve someone else. And most of the demand comes from the cities. So this extraction thing, there is going to have to be a balance somewhere. It comes back to how countries think of us. Unless we are rich in per capita terms, we are not going to be considered worthy of engaging. So there is foreign power and all that. From there extends the pressure for growth, which then comes back and saying that how much of capital investment, roads, and everything else that we're going to put, and then consumption is going to start becoming a major part of GDP. How much are we going to consume? The more you eat and make those numbers go up, the more you're going to be seen as more powerful and richer and whatever it is. I don't deny that there is economic need for all of us. I wouldn't be speaking on this laptop and with this microphone if we didn't build them, and these materials did come from somewhere, right? But how do you strike this balance of having what we define as progress? We are going to be making bots and automatons and more technology and all of
Right.
these things. We wouldn't be able to even have this. Where do you think we strike this balance, and how do we know we have exceeded? There is a thin line. We don't
Yeah.
seem to know where that line is and how to compensate back. How do you restore back? What is restoration? How do you go back? How do you even think about these things? As a city dweller who has no, the amount of information I need to gather to even get to
Right.
this part is so much that I'm saying, no, I just go and build the next extractive device like this one.
Yeah. I mean, so the thing is that we've run out of a lot of that time to say, oh yeah, you know what, I don't understand it. I can get away with not involving in some sense because we're seeing it everywhere, right? So the frequency of all these so-called random nature, what is the word that we use, right? Natural disaster calamity. These things are going to
Hmm.
increase as we know with changing climates, with biodiversity loss, with this haphazard way of developing things. So it's not about just about this very development versus no development. It's more about why not use some smart ways of even doing what we're doing. We have so much waste in and so much efficiency loss. So these are things which are kind of low hanging fruit to fix. So we're not concerned about even those things, then we're really in a problem, and that's where we are now. Right. So even if we extract, again, just to go back to say a simple to have a simple example of this Kaveri issue. Do we know how much we're losing by water's getting lost by bringing it in? Is there a more efficient way to do that? So those are simpler, easier, non-political things to get into as well. So we're not even interested in fixing those, right? We want to go at the cheapest, easiest option available, and that is where the problem is. And so the price is going to be paid further down. You're just taking that, putting that debt on, and that further down is now adding up and we're seeing it. So it's only going to increase. So with time, so in the next 10, 20, 30 years, you will see these things at a bigger scale. And the scary one then is then how do you deal with multiple issues? So now, unfortunate as it is and terrible as it is Wayanad in some areas. But how do you respond to this if you then have flooding in Chennai at the same time, something happening in Bangalore, water drying up at the same time here, some fires, forest fires in Uttarakhand? All this starts popping up at multiple locations all the time. You're going to be spread very thin. So then there is no way, what are you going to do? Even if you have like a great food delivery system or whatever else it is that we have, your resources and your bandwidth, and then people are going to be at dire straits. So that's going to lead to quite a mess, to put it lightly. So just again to appeal to the self-preservationist in us, it needs to be fixed, and so we have to stop thinking about it as, oh, it's those wildlife guys' problem or those people working in rural development and they're doing some nice cute things there. Okay, great, let them fix it. They'll solve it. No, we're not. We're failing miserably in that sense to fix it at that scale. So people really need to find avenues, and there are ways to do it. Right? It's. I mean, you can choose not to, but that's a cop out, as it were. There are ways to involve and to be part of this and to try and um, contribute in some form or the other.
No, you're right. It's becoming whack-a-mole everywhere.
Yeah.
Just going on whacking at things, and you don't know which one is popping up. You hit one on this side somewhere. So the
Yeah.
complexity of this is not understood, and we seem to think that it's all straight line. And the efficiency thing you talked about, I just have this favorite quote. I think I tweeted this out a while ago.
Mm.
What of the total energy we produce every year, only 11% of it is usable energy. The rest of it
Right.
is wasted by inefficiencies of the machines we have made.
Right.
There's a lot of that, right? Whatever we invented 100 years ago, we stick one or two iterations and then we stick to it as long as we get the cost out of it. Where do you see the way forward in our ability to think about extraction again, right? Where do we start? Where should people start if you were to If you were to talk to
So
people and say, okay, here you guys are in the city, you want to go escape over the weekend to that place,
yeah,
that's not enough.
I mean, so to go into the very nuance of the political angle or the socio-economic political angle of this is another story, I think, and not uh, may not be appropriate here to talk about that, because when you really talk about extraction and all that, it takes us down another path. But what people can do, and I think everyone should do, is to have that respect again, which I think by
Hmm.
default then would bring you back to understanding where you're going, what you're doing, and to realize that it's all interconnected. And if you want to live in a disconnected world, there's nothing much you can do. But I think, and you have to realize that it's going to impact you. It was already impacting you and everything around you directly. While Corona seemed like a wake up call and everyone was like, oh my God, will things go back to normal? It kind of did in a way. And we went, even more nuts
The
as it
other
could
way.
be. Yeah. So, but something is coming along which is going to wake us up again. And some, unfortunately, it's things like this that come along which have devastating impact. A lot of this can be avoided by actually doing something about it right now. There are many people working. There are many organizations, institutions, some parts of governments. There are people working on this now. How do you involve and what do you do? There are lots of options and ways to do it, and it's not only one way of involving. So you don't have to give your whole life to it. It's not just giving money. It's not just giving time. You can figure out what works for you, but can you at least get beyond that me and my need and look at something beyond that? That's just a
Mhm.
personal question. I mean, if we're not going to do it, then we're all in a mess.
Hmm.
It's also tiring to convince people of very simple things. It's not some complicated rocket science we're talking about. This is
Hmm.
kind of like basic civic science, right? It's like how frustrating it can be to just say, like, why are we throwing plastic on the road or something simple like that? So it's sometimes we just, I don't know, we're exasperating, and I would appeal that people just understand a little bit more about nature and try and see the interconnectedness of it. But and we do see, I think you do see that happening. There are some nice changes. You see a lot of young people getting more interested, and because they're also seeing the mess and the impacts of it.
Because
So
they are going to be left holding the bag tomorrow. It's
they
like
already are.
they already are. We seem to be a little more caring and trying to fix it. The older generation is like, what are you guys doing? Yeah, we spent all this time building all these things for you guys, and you don't want it.
Yeah.
And the next generation is like, we may want it, but you're leaving us with a bag of shit that you kick the can down the road, and now we are having to deal with this. Interestingly, I was just looking for the other statistics. Right, globally, in just 6 years, we have consumed 75% of the total metric tons of materials that we consumed in an entire century.
Yeah.
So the post-pandemic, as not even post-pandemic, the last 6 years, I
Yeah.
think this was from 2018, whatever it is. We're just going the other way. We're just compounding the amount of extraction. And to think that we are going to go from whatever 5 trillion to 55 trillion, how are we even going to be sustainable? I mean, I think even the decision makers are grappling at the straws. Without the consumption, what is going to lead to this GDP thing? How are you going to get those numbers up on the board? And nobody is willing to change that. We don't have an alternate way of measuring our growth, influence, our positioning as a rich country. When we point to those people and say, look, they are living
Yeah.
nicely with their nature and their small cities, but we are left with so many people, so many resources to be had. Everybody wants a job to do something, and the doing something is making another device with the same minerals and material. So if you're
Yeah.
not going to do something, what is the job for?
But also, if you look at the other countries which have a lot of that, they've outsourced a lot of their mess to us, right? So either they're shipping their waste to us, or
Yeah.
we are offsetting a lot of the mess that is created. So you can have these pockets of very nice, lovely, kind of clean places for small numbers of people, when the rest of the world is taking the brunt of it. So it's been balanced in that sense. But as we develop, grow in that sense, develop in this same sense, and so does other countries and powers like China or a lot of nation states in Africa and things like that, you will see. I mean, then who's going to offset that? And that's where the problem is on South America, and that's where we're at a conundrum. So the reimagination of the entire way we do it has to happen. Now that's a tough ask because that's a global ask. To even do it at a panchayat level is hard sometimes. So, so I wish I knew, but it's going to take that revamp, reimagination, and as citizens, I think we no longer have the luxury of just allowing it to be, because it's coming at you literally, and it is going to get there. And yes, the more wealthy and the more better off will again outsource their climate kind of
Mm.
angst or suffering down the road to somebody else. But even that has very limited time and limited things. Mm, with epidemics and pandemics and things like that, you can't. Doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get impacted. There's nowhere to hide. So we have to also realize there's nowhere to run and hide. You're not going to find these safe zones, as it were, from the climate catastrophe or from a lot of these issues. So it is in our best interest to, and I think the decent and right thing to do, to wake up and actually do something about it. Yeah.
Respect for nature and all of the other beings beyond the human being, and really respect it, understand the
Yeah.
implications of what it is one of the things. And the second thing is start looking at your extractiveness and understanding the implications of what you're doing with money. Like you said, people can outsource their pain and get into convenience where they don't have to care about this. And if the people with wealth actually care and understand that they shouldn't be throwing it up, it starts from the the countries that are exporting all of their nonsense.
Right.
From there it starts, but it could even start the other way. We could be the leader of the world trying to say that we are not as hopeless as you guys are, so might as well get your act together while we do these things more responsibly instead of following your way.
I mean, one thing that's always fascinating is that in a country of more than 1 billion, with a relatively small landmass, I mean, we're a huge country in a geographical sense, but for the number of people and the density per capita, it's very cramped. And in that, you have some of the biggest, largest, most what is considered dangerous animals, right? From various species of bears to elephants to tigers to leopards to hyenas to all these different snake species, from king cobras to Russell's vipers. So we have managed to, and we continue to live and thrive with all this multitude of things, which in other countries don't even exist. I mean, Italy and Spain and Germany will be fighting if one wolf in a reintroduction program has crossed the border and people freak out. Here, people are, there's elephants that have killed multiple people, and we're still respectful and revere it, and only, so the intrinsic and the way in which we actually are able to live alongside with nature, wildlife, I think that's a big part of who we are in a lot of the global south, especially in India. So I think, how do we leverage that? How do we really show the uniqueness of that? Again, not to just romanticize it, but people have seen that thing of, okay, we really do. These are very much part of our life. So how do we again, realize that? And that is what's special about us.
Just this other stakeholder I wanted to bring to the table. Cities are engines of the economy. They are the ones that
Yeah.
are going to drive a lot of these things. Of course, we again
Yeah.
outsource the industries to the outskirts and dirty them
Right.
somewhere else, maybe a village somewhere else. But still, the corporates play a big role. The industry and the markets play a big role, and it's
Right.
going to continue to do that. Their view of biodiversity is 1 inch tall grass, which is cut every day and watered with a lot of water.
Right.
That is their idea of green. It looks green. They might even paint. So, how should corporates look at biodiversity not as just
Yeah.
as CSR in the corner, but if you're building a building and it has some, are you even bringing that into this? Not just to greenwash. How can you really bring biodiversity into the city in a small way? I'm not saying bring a tiger into your office.
Right.
I'm saying can you even get the right kind of non-human species into this?
Of course, you can, but it's a couple of issues there. Again, it goes back to we think that it's easy and simple, so that green, which means any tree, anything, just plant something, whether it's exotic, invasive from outside this place, which is going to do more harm to that, is okay. So it's like we give so much respect to all these other things and complex systems. I mean, there is complexity to ecosystems. There's complexity to all these things. And so you have a multitude of species that work together to actually make something in a sense of functional ecosystem, even if it's in a small city sense, to bring that diversity together. So people just think that, okay, we'll go and just do some tree planting program and we're done with it. So this disrespect, it's again disrespect. So you wouldn't do that if you were running a software company. You wouldn't just say, "Hi, I'll hire some random guys who did 12 standard pass in computer science and I'll make a great computer." You wouldn't do that, right? You do so much other stuff to get it right. Anyone else does it in that field. But here we think, we'll do some random tree planting program. We'll dig one pit there and we'll make a lake. So if it was that simple, we wouldn't be in this mess. It is, we need to have more respect. It is more complex and we need to ask for help where we don't see it. So it just seems to be one of those spaces. And also the voice is not there, right? I can talk on behalf of the elephants and the elephants are not protesting it. Whereas with anything else, there is actually a representation. So now I say, this is green, this is great. The landscape is looking great again. And so what? So you just decide that by yourself without any real feedback loop coming in. So it's an attitude problem. I think we all largely have to look inward and say, okay, listen, maybe we should also learn from nature, right? See what's there and not go with this interventionist mindset, which I think we have a lot of. Is let's do something. We need to go and do something. A lot of the time, you just need to be observant, see what is there. There are probably natural systems in place or in the close by place before you go and start doing stuff. Observe, look, and a lot of nature's constantly fixing itself, constantly finding ways, fighting back, as it were, and fixing it. We have to be respectful enough to allow that to happen and to observe it. So I think these are the kind of core things that you have to distill out, which is the respect, the observance, being able to observe, being able to not feel like we know the answers, and push our agenda onto wild spaces and wild things and also other communities of people.
Last but not the least, when the markets don't care or are not respectful and the citizens are not that, what hope do we have of the government doing anything at all?
True. It's this only blaming the government and saying the government has to do, No, it's all our responsibility. And we're extracting out of the system that is designed on that. And the markets will not care, right? Because there is no true cost accounting for it. If you started actually putting the cost of those raw materials, it's basically being subsidized either by rural communities or other people or by nature. A lot of it is being subsidized by that, a lot of the raw materials. You're not really factoring in what that means over the next 1,000 years. If you had to leave that in the ground, what is the real cost? Whether it's water or oil or rock or any of the stuff or minerals, it's just taken so the accounting systems itself are flawed and don't actually account for what that means. So you will have that. So that it will not react. Markets will not react till there are ways in which you build that into the system. And when you do, it is a tricky one because on the one hand, yes, it does get people to think about that. But you shouldn't really need an economic lens to realize that without a functional ecosystem, we'd all not exist. Because without those regulatory services and the existence of clean water, fresh air, there will be no market, there will be nothing. So that it's an attitude problem again. And a little bit delusional, maybe.
True cost accounting is required. We can't get away from that or say that, okay, without making the hard work of evaluating the true cost, we can somehow wing this by looking at only the apparent cost that people don't pay for. But this is a good conversation, Sid. Thanks for coming on and discussing this. I know we have all the controversial stuff for the thing over glass at the offsite, but this was useful to bring out to the people the consequences of how we think and how much we respect is what is showing up in other places and even in front of our houses. Thanks, Sid, for coming on the show.
Yes, thanks for having me. Hopefully that was useful.